are you?
Doing great, you. Thank you.
I want to talk to you about Leader McConnell. I've already checked with his team. He's fine. He had a senior moment. They caught it on tape. It's embarrassing, but he's fine. Could you explain the difference between being an older senator and an older president? Because there's a huge difference in my view, and you've dealt with both older senators and you're watching an old president as we speak.
Yeah, there's a huge difference because, well, first of all, there's just a huge difference between being a legislator and an executive. So legislators can go underground a bit. They can hide a bit over time. The urgency of the decisions they have to make is not as immediate. The job is very high pressure, but it's high pressure over time. You have a little bit more discretion over your schedule and your time. It's an entirely different thing. And as I really appreciate the fact that you say good things about Leader McConnell, because let me just say, when he was the majority leader and had the votes, he did everything that you can do in an institution which is largely not a majoritarian body. Okay. In other words, he didn't have the votes to overcome a filibuster, but he passed the tax cuts, he passed regulatory relief, he approved the judges. Those were all things he could do with 50 votes, and he did them. So he's been a great leader. I do think age may be getting to him a bit, but as you said, I mean, I don't think he'll continue as leader if he feels he can't do it, and I'm confident he can as of now.
Now, Senator, how big is the leader's staff? I want people to understand. You got one job, which is to run the floor, and your staff helps you run the floor and then to herd the sheep. And they're not sheep, it's like to herd the cats. How big is the team around Leader McConnell?
The policy team around him in his capital office, I'm not talking about his personal offices in Kentucky or back in his regular office in the Russell building. It's 10 to 12 policy people, and then a number of administrative staffers. Because remember, the job it's not like a committee chairman. It's not primarily a policy job. He has input into that. It's primarily procedural. It's primarily going around and holding the hands of the colleagues and herding the cats. And it's an extraordinary job in the Senate. I think it's a very difficult job, but he's had years and years of experience to perfect it, and he's very good at what he does. I mean, I've gone through.
I think his team is without question the best team I've worked with in 33 years of broadcast. And it's just very continually excellent. But at some point, he will retire. Who will the Republicans replace Mitch McConnell? Because that's really not a job I wish on anyone. Because when you follow someone who is a master, it's very hard to equal that level of ability.
Well, the two names that are mentioned most often are John Thune from South Dakota and John Cornyn from Texas. I served with both of them, know them both very well. They're fine men, and I think they'll do a great job, whichever one of them gets elected, or I guess there could be somebody else. And when it comes to that, one of the things I'll tell you, having served on whip teams and gone through all kinds of leadership races and been elected as a leader myself when I was in the Missouri legislature, you can't be certain of what that outcome's going to be unless you're living with it every day and talking to senators every day, because minds can change. Lots of people hold their cards close to the vest. And if the race is close at all, it's difficult to predict. But we're not there yet. I expect Leader McConnell to be able to continue serving through the rest of this Congress. And after that, we'll see.
By the way, I think he's getting better from his fall, so I think he's going to serve beyond that.
Yeah.
But as between Cornyn and Biden, is that a secret ballot or is that a show of hands?
It's a secret ballot, and everybody gets in a caucus room. Now, there are all kinds of tactics that you can use. So sometimes if the race is close, the people who are running will want you to sit next to somebody who's undecided or somebody they think is soft, to try and hold their hand until the final moment. So now there are fewer noses to count in the Senate, of course, than in the House. And if there's more than two people running and nobody gets a majority, then the person who was last drops off, and you keep voting until somebody gets a majority.
Have you served, by the way, with John Tester? Sherrod Brown are going to be retired soon. Joe Manchin is going to quit himself, or Bob Casey Jr. Did you serve with any of those four?
I served with Sherrod in the House, but not the others. No, they've come lately and didn't have House service.
So do you run a service for senators who leave on how to become a non-senator but still be a senator? You're young enough to do that for these four guys who are going to be involuntarily retired. Do you do that? Call them up and comfort them?
Absolutely not. But I do periodically get phone calls from former colleagues and people who intend to retire or are thinking about it to ask me, what's life like afterwards? And I encourage, like my former colleague Roy Blunt from Missouri, who's a really deep thinker. I encourage people to stay involved in policy. I've done it, Hugh. I mean, look, I've chaired or co-chaired a number of advisory commissions. I was on the Defense Policy Board. I've been in think tanks. And not enough of them, I think, continue to do that because it's...
I agree completely. And do the rounds and speak your piece as Jim Talent does at the Bipartisan Policy Center. Follow him on the site formerly known as Twitter, now known as X, at Jim Talent, not hard to remember. And follow me in the next hour.